Hey everyone, how's it going? Matthew Kadish here, author of the Earthman Jack Space Saga, which you can find on Amazon, and everyone's favorite opinionator here on the internet. Thank you for checking out my channel, and today we're going to be talking about big news that I was alerted about from my good buddy Odin over at Odin's Movie Blog. He did a video about this, which, as always, was very insightful and very entertaining, so if you guys haven't checked out Odin's Movie Blog channel yet, please be sure to do so, because he has a lot of great content over there, and a lot of great opinions, and a lot of great news. And one of the things that he did a video on was this Cosmic Book News exclusive that says JJ Abrams is taking on Superman and Green Lantern. Now, keep in mind that this exclusive, as Cosmic Book News puts it, it's still in the rumor phase. So it's not 100% guaranteed that JJ Abrams is going to be doing Superman or Green Lantern or anything associated with DC Comics quite yet. But this article is going to tell us why they think this is going to happen. So while Warner Brothers chose to sit out of Comic-Con, the talk around town in San Diego was all about the DCEU and Crisis on Infinite Earths, and now I have learned that JJ Abrams will be taking on both Superman and Green Lantern, and by I imagine it's the author Matt McGloin. So he was at San Diego Comic-Con doing some legwork on this. As you guys know, I did another video about how DC didn't really have much of a presence at Comic-Con this year. Warner Brothers kind of chose to sit it out. So we got some announcements on the TV front, but absolutely nothing new on the movie front. So this Mr. Matt went on to do a little bit of legwork, and he says, "It's my understanding that a big reason why JJ Abrams recently signed that mega deal with Warner Brothers is that he wants to tackle the DC movie characters. Abrams was actually attached to Superman Flyby years ago." I don't know what Superman Flyby is, but I guess he was attached to it. "And he is going to do movies for Superman and Green Lantern first, confirming my speculation from last month. I've also been told that JJ Abrams' wife, producer Katie McGrath, was responsible for getting Ann Sarnoff's name named as the new chair and CEO of Warner Brothers." We're going to get to that in a minute. That's not all, as guess who's best buds with Abrams? Yep, the Batman director Matt Reeves. So we see how everything adds up. Well, in all fairness, there are a lot of people who are best buds with JJ Abrams in Hollywood, so I'm not sure that connection is very telling for anything. JJ Abrams has big plans for DC. It's also known that Warner Brothers passed on Mission Impossible director Chris McQuarrie and Henry Cavill's Superman pitch for A Man of Steel 2 and Green Lantern, which, according to what I've been told, is because of Abrams' own plans. I don't have specifics about what Abrams is going to do with Superman and Green Lantern, but the question of Henry Cavill did come up. It seems to be that Abrams is leaning towards casting a younger actor as Superman to go along with Robert Pattinson as the new Batman. Update, it is claimed Cavill dropped out of the role, which he did over a contract dispute. I think he's open to coming back for it if Warner Brothers is willing to pay him what he wants, but I think that the Mustache Gate issue with Justice League kind of soured Warner Brothers on wanting to continue to work with him. As the article goes on, Superman can't be older than Batman, is what I've been told. Henry Cavill is actually 3 years older than Robert Pattinson, but possibly by the time JJ Abrams gets a new Superman movie off the ground, Cavill could be nearing 40, while the 33-year-old Pattinson will start filming on The Batman at the end of this year, and clearly next year is slated for a trilogy. That said, the talk at Comic-Con did lead directly to everyone agreeing that Henry Cavill is a great Superman, and he will be very difficult to replace. I agree with that. I think Henry Cavill was a wonderful Superman. I suppose there is some sort of fan campaign similar to Release the Snyder Cut to keep Henry Cavill as Superman that it couldn't hurt. It's known Henry wants to stick around the DCEU as Superman and that he is loved by the fans, so maybe Abrams will take that into consideration. I've also been told the creatives and such at WB would like to do another Justice League movie, but that they are trying to get things right and are instead presently focusing on character-driven movies. And of course, they would like to do a Justice League that isn't awful and makes a lot of money, so that makes a lot of sense. But a lot of speculation in this article. So my guess is he probably talked to a bunch of people at Comic-Con who said, "Ooh, I heard this and I heard that." So all this is like secondhand hearsay. But it isn't surprising if JJ Abrams gets involved with DC Comics movies, and I will tell you why. So a while back here, Warner Brothers was in heavy negotiations with JJ Abrams. Basically, there was like one of these Hollywood power deals going on where JJ Abrams was kind of shopping his Bad Robot production company around to a bunch of different studios. So I believe Warner Media and Apple were both kind of vying for him in a very heated bidding war to try to win over JJ Abrams and Bad Robot to produce TV shows and movies. And the reason that this bidding war kind of started is that we're in the middle of what is being called the streaming wars. So Netflix and Amazon kind of came on the scene with their genre redefining streaming services. What do they call them? Disruptors. That's what the word I'm looking for. They're disrupting business models. And basically all the studios looked at all the money that these guys were making off subscriptions and original series and stuff like that. And they're like, you know what? We should get in on this. And so all these big companies, Disney, Warner Brothers, Apple, and a handful of others probably, are looking to create their own streaming services to get some of that sweet, sweet subscription revenue. And in order to do that, they need content. They need a lot of content. And you can kind of see how Disney's rolling out Disney Plus with all these original series for Marvel and Star Wars and Pixar and all their properties and stuff like that. Content is king, and that is why Netflix is stepping up its original series offerings, because networks are pulling more of their content away from that. And basically, what Bad Robot offered was a variety of content, not only on TV, but also on the movie front. And JJ Abrams has a lot of cachet in town. And one of the interesting things is that JJ Abrams' Bad Robot has had a ongoing television deal with Warner Brothers since 2006. So about 13 years now, they've been working with Warner Brothers to produce very successful TV shows. And Warner Brothers wanted to continue that relationship, especially considering that they're going to need to ramp up their content offerings for the upcoming HBO Max streaming service, which they just announced. Now, one of the things that caught my eye in this article here was this part where he says that JJ Abrams' wife, producer Katie McGrath, was responsible for getting Ann Sarnoff named as the new chair and CEO of Warner Brothers. And I thought that was kind of interesting because for those of you who don't know, there was a big shakeup over at Warner Brothers in March where the then CEO of the studio, let me see if I can, this guy right here, Kevin Tujihara. Sorry, I wanted to make sure I got that right. Kevin Tujihara. He used to run Warner Brothers, and he was embroiled in a bit of a scandal where he was accused of trading sexual favors for preferential treatment. So basically one actress in particular, allegedly would sleep with him, and then he would help her to get roles on TV shows and movies and stuff like that. And when this came out, kind of in the wake of what happened with Les Moonves and Harvey Weinstein and stuff like that, there was a big controversy. And you can see JJ Abrams and his wife over here, Katie McGrath, who it turns out Katie McGrath is actually one of the co-founders of the Time's Up organization, which is a Hollywood organization dedicated to preventing sexual harassment in the studio system, which kind of came up after the whole Harvey Weinstein kerfluffle. And that coupled with like the broader Me Too movement that's going on there, have kind of combined forces to put a lot of pressure on Warner Brothers to oust Kevin Tujihara. And basically this happened right in the midst of their negotiations with Bad Robot, and Katie McGrath is Bad Robot's co-CEO along with JJ Abrams. They both run the company together. And so she was putting a lot of pressure on Warner Brothers to kind of, oust Kevin Tujihara if they wanted to have a chance to, continue working with Bad Robot. So basically, Kevin Tujihara eventually, I think he officially stepped down, but he was kind of fired. And then the search was on for a new CEO. And last month in June, Warner Brothers announced that they were hiring their first ever female CEO, Ann Sarnoff. And when I first heard this news, I was a little bit concerned because it seemed like a diversity hire. Ann Sarnoff was previously president of the BBC productions on the BBC network, and so like there had been a lot of kind of issues with traditional BBC shows going woke, like the whole Doctor Who thing and stuff like that. But I mean, Britain is just naturally kind of like a very left-leaning country, so I mean, it's not her fault that these things went. And so like when I started digging into Ann Sarnoff's background, I was expecting to find that she's kind of an activist or something like that, which I couldn't find anything about that. It turns out she's just a really good executive, and she was responsible for growing a lot of the BBC brands, and apparently she just killed it over there, and that was one of the big reasons why Warner Brothers kind of started looking at her in the first place. Now, I couldn't find any direct connection between Ann Sarnoff and JJ Abrams or his wife. So that part in the article about how, they kind of got her CEO position, I don't think they're quite at that king-making level just yet. I think one of the big reasons why Ann Sarnoff was appointed as CEO of Warner Brothers as their first ever female CEO in like something like close to 100 years of being in operation. Basically, first of all, she's a woman. And coming off of that Time's Up, Me Too controversy, I think that the people at Warner Media were saying, like, we need to put a woman into this role to kind of, make up for the, sexual harassment of our previous CEO. So being a woman, I think, was a big qualifier for their candidates of the people that they looked at. But of those candidates, obviously, they felt like Ann Sarnoff was one of the best. And I think one of the reasons for that is that Warner Brothers was planning to roll out this HBO Max streaming service of theirs, and they want someone with experience handling a rollout like that. And basically, Ann Sarnoff was kind of the brains behind the streaming service for the BBC called BritBox, BRITBOX. So it's basically a streaming service that allows people who maybe can't get all the content from the British television networks, but they love that type of stuff and they want to watch it. And I've actually subscribed to it on Amazon a few times because I love me my Agatha Christie mysteries. But all that aside, she was responsible for that. And so she has not only experience with streaming services, but she also knows how to juggle the content and make sure that we get certain types of content for the streaming service and then certain types of content for the traditional distribution methods. And Warner Brothers, because they are a media conglomerate, they have stuff for, they have networks, they have movies, they have stuff that goes everywhere. And so they wanted a CEO that could balance all this stuff, and Ann Sarnoff fit the bill. And by all accounts, she's a very smart lady. She's very talented, but she doesn't have a lot of experience on the movie production front. And when it comes to that, in this article, they kind of talk about the people who've been kind of picking up the slack on that. The head of motion picture and television chiefs, they're two guys by the name of Toby Emmerich and Peter Roth. And Peter Roth has a long-standing relationship with JJ Abrams because, Bad Robot has been producing TV shows on Warner Brothers for a long time. And Toby is kind of the guy who's been handling the movie end of things. And basically, because Ann Sarnoff doesn't have a lot of, experience with movies, she's been relying heavily on Toby Emmerich to kind of handle that thing. So because of Peter Roth's close relationship with JJ Abrams, I believe he kind of brought JJ in with Toby, and they're kind of spitballing some ideas for how JJ Abrams can, work on the DC Universe stuff. Now, the thing about the DC Universe is that Warner Brothers has basically just come out and said that they've abandoned their initial DCEU plans. The stuff that Zack Snyder was building, where you had Ben Affleck as Batman, Henry Cavill as Superman. you do a Justice League movie and then you branch out to other individual character films. That strategy has basically been completely abandoned, and they're looking at standalone DC superhero films as, they don't want to go through all the trouble of trying to interconnect them all. So it gets kind of a little bit confusing. Zack Snyder is no longer overseeing the DCEU. Justice League kind of was a huge kerfluffle for Warner Media, so they kind of put the kibosh on that. And one of the things that JJ Abrams is known for, as he's known as the Hollywood franchise rebooter. They bring JJ Abrams in to reboot franchises and relaunch them and make them successful, and then he moves on to the next one. He did that with Mission Impossible, he did that with Star Trek, he did that with Star Wars, and now it looks like he might be doing that with DC Universe. Now, a lot of people are saying that JJ Abrams is going to be kind of like the Kevin Feige character overseeing the DC Universe if this is the case, and I personally don't see that, simply because JJ Abrams is not a studio executive. He is a creative guy. He runs Bad Robot, and Warner Brothers already tried to do the whole auteur executive thing with Zack Snyder, where Zack Snyder, he was also a creative guy, but they gave him the executive position of overseeing the entire DC Universe, and his vision for it didn't jive with all the characters and all the strategy and stuff like that. So it was a little bit of a disaster, and there's a bit of a mess right now that JJ Abrams may have to clean up if he comes in and takes that role. But right now, it seems to be up in the air that he might do a Superman film, or he might do a Green Lantern film. And if he's doing the Superman film, basically they're going to be relaunching the entire frickin' DCEU franchise. They'll probably keep Shazam and Aquaman and Wonder Woman in place, but they'll probably have like a new Superman, a new Batman, and try to work them together somehow to create a new Justice League movie somewhere down the road. I actually think it'd be smarter if JJ Abrams focused on Green Lantern, because there's a lot less baggage with Green Lantern. The Ryan Reynolds version of that character was just terrible. Not Ryan Reynolds himself, but the movie itself was just bad. So people would love to see a reboot of that, and we've already kind of gotten some glimpses of the Green Lantern Corps in Justice League. So I think J.J. Abrams would probably get a lot less flack from fans if he kind of went in and retooled Green Lantern and did a Green Lantern movie to kind of set that up. But if he's going to do Superman, you're going to have the Cavill fans screaming bloody murder if he casts someone new. Then you have to kind of, set the stage for a whole new, groundwork for the forthcoming movies and stuff like that. And one of the problems that J.J. Abrams always faces is that he has a lack of follow-through. Like, he's really good at launching stuff, but he's very bad at kind of, landing it, bringing it in, and giving a satisfactory conclusion to things. So what I could see is, like, he might do like a Superman movie and then be like, I'm bored, and he's going to go off and do a Green Lantern movie, and then he's like, I'm bored, and then he's going to go off and do a different movie, and he just hands these things off to new people after kind of setting the stage for it. But we saw how that worked out with Star Wars, where he kind of came in and he's like, okay, Star Wars is back. And here, Rian Johnson, you take care of this now. And The Last Jedi just completely almost destroyed that franchise. So, there are some risks to this strategy of having J.J. Abrams come in. I think what Warner Brothers needs to do is very similar to kind of what CBS is doing with Star Trek, where CBS has assigned a specific executive to oversee Star Trek, like all the Star Trek shows and stuff like that, and kind of liaise between the production company and the studio. And I think you need someone in that position, which is basically what Kevin Feige does. Like, he's a studio executive. He's the head of the Marvel film production slate. And so he basically oversees all those movies, and he has the final say in what goes into those movies. And I think you really need someone in that position over at Warner Brothers for DC Comics. Otherwise, J.J. Abrams, like, he could leave, he could get focused on another project. That was one of the big problems with Star Trek, was after the first Star Trek reboot in 2009, J.J. Abrams went off and did Super 8, and he kind of dropped the ball on the development of Wrath of Khan. That production got pushed back, and he was kind of waffling on if he wanted to come back and direct it or not. So like there were just like a lot of things that him just being a normal creative person in Hollywood did to affect that franchise that were negative. And so it just came down to a lack of focus. If you have an executive whose job it is to say like, okay, we're doing these movies and we're working with these people and these things are going to come out on this time and on this date, boom, done, over with. You know, that's the type of thing that DC Comics movies need, and they don't have it right now. I think Jeff Johns was trying to fill that position, but again, he didn't seem all that effective. He did give us some good movies with Aquaman and Shazam, but at the same time, like, he doesn't really seem committed to the role or as experienced in production as someone like Kevin Feige is. So will JJ Abrams be the one to oversee the DCEU? I don't think so. I think he's definitely going to come in and help launch a lot of these characters, Green Lantern, probably some of the lesser-known DC properties. He's going to put to the forefront. He might direct the first movie and then move on. He might bring in people from his Bad Robot stable to handle some of these things. So we might be seeing a resurgence in DC comic movies because of JJ Abrams' deal with Warner Brothers, and because Ann Sarnoff is kind of taking a less active role in developing these movies than Tujihara did. And she's just letting the experts kind of handle it. So, and plus she's also very good at like the whole branding thing. So she may just kind of oversee the merchandising and the licensing and stuff on this and let the creatives do their job. She seems really kind of geared towards that. So that's basically the whole JJ Abrams conspiracy thing. I don't think he's going to be in a position to oversee all the DCEU movies, but he may attach his name to a bunch of them. He may be making a lot of original series for HBO Max with Bad Robot and also a couple new movies. But it definitely looks like he's going to be doing something in the DC Comics universe. At the very least, it would just make sense that Warner Brothers would tap him to relaunch some of their floundering properties. So guys, that's the news today. What do you think of this? Do you think JJ Abrams should kind of take the Kevin Feige role in DC Comics? Do you think he'd make a good Green Lantern? Do you think he'd make a good Superman? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This is Matthew Kadish, and I will catch you in the next video. Later.